Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I am Deepika Mehto, and coming up in the next 1 hour. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange pleads guilty to a felony charge in deal with US authorities, returns home to Australia after decades. As per the US presidential debate nears, Biden campaign stresses Trump's role in overturning abortion rights ruling to mark second anniversary. June the 25th marks the anniversary of emergency declared by India's former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in the year 1975. And in T20 Cricket World Cup, Afghanistan on the cusp of history. League match against Bangladesh tantalizingly poised. A victory will take them to a historic semi-final spot. So those were the top headlines of the hour that we are tracing for all our viewers here on DD India News Hour. And now to begin with the top and latest news. Julian Assange is free. He was granted bail by the High Court in London and was released at Stansted Airport during the afternoon, where he boarded a plane and departed the United Kingdom. Assange left Belmarsh maximum security prison after having spent 1,901 days there. On his release, WikiLeaks said this is the result of a global campaign all the way to the United Nations. This further created the space for a long period of negotiations with the US Department of Justice. The charges against the WikiLeaks founder in the US stem from one of the largest publications of classified information in America's history. 52 years old Assange has agreed to plead guilty to a single criminal count of conspiring to obtain and disclose classified US national defense documents. Assange is due to be sentenced to 62 months of time already served at a hearing on the island of Saipan. Nick Harper from Washington has more.
Already seen an incredible outpouring on social media over the last couple of hours since this story broke. You mentioned just a moment ago some of the reaction from WikiLeaks. They have also gone on to say that Julian Assange fought for us and Julian's freedom is our freedom, referring to all the grassroots supporters who've been with him throughout this campaign. Because bear in mind that since 2012, he spent 7 years inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London, holed up there to escape extradition to the United States. In 2019, police went into the embassy, dragged him out, and he ended up being jailed for a further 5 years in London, in a prison there. He's now on a plane out of the United Kingdom, heading to a court appearance. His wife, Stella Assange, has said, "Words cannot express our immense gratitude to you who've mobilised for years and years to make this come true." We've also heard from a number of press freedom organisations who've championed this case and fought to get him released, saying that they still thought that it was alarming that the Biden administration felt the need to extract a guilty plea from Julian Assange. But not everyone is happy with this. We've heard from a former FBI Assistant Director, Frank Figliuzzi. He said that Assange did irreparable harm and that he endangered lives. We're likely to get plenty more reaction, but not everyone is happy with the release of Julian Assange, a man that they say endangered lives by releasing those 700,000 classified documents from the military back in.
Julian Assange's wife and WikiLeaks editor thanked their supporters outside London prison.
It's exactly 12 years today since Julian went into the embassy of Ecuador, which granted him political asylum, protection from persecution, from torture, from a life imprisonment. And 12 years on, I'm visiting Julian in a high security prison. But this period of our lives, I'm confident now, has come to an end. And I think that by this time next week, Julian will be free.
course, has been to be deprived of freedom for all these years in the battle for journalistic freedom, freedom to publish, foundation of democracy.
Now, it all started in the year 2010 when WikiLeaks released a leaked video in the month of April from a US helicopter showing an airstrike that killed civilians in Baghdad, including 2 Reuters news staff. Then again in July, WikiLeaks released more than 91,000 documents, mostly secret US military reports about the Afghanistan war.
In a major release of documents, 400,000 classified military files chronicling the Iraq War were released with the releases of thousands of US diplomatic cables, including candid views of foreign leaders and blunt assessments of security threats. And all this led to mayhem and a scramble for Julian Assange's arrest. In November 2010, Swedish court ordered Assange's arrest on sex crime allegations, which he denies, and later he was freed on bail. February 2011, London court ordered Assange's extradition to Sweden. He appeals. June 14, 2012, the British Supreme Court rejected Assange's final appeal. 5 days later, he takes refuge in Ecuador's embassy in London to seek political asylum, which Ecuador granted in August 2012. After Ecuador revokes his political asylum in April, Assange was carried out of the embassy and arrested. He was sentenced to 50 weeks in prison. Swedish prosecutors reopened their investigation in May 2019 for Assange's extradition. While in June the same year, the US Justice Department formally asked Britain to extradite Assange to the United States to face charges that he conspired to hack US government computers and violated an espionage law. Though British judge ruled that Assange should not be extradited due to mental health problems. But US won an appeal in December 2021 against the ruling with package of assurances about the conditions of Assange's detention. Again in 2022, Britain's Supreme Court denied Assange permission to appeal against the orders. Extradition to the United States, which prompted Assange to appeal. Finally, Assange launched his final attempt to prevent extradition this year in February, and now we are hearing of the deal between the US Justice Department and Assange, in which he will plead guilty to 1 criminal count and be sentenced to time served.
Free Julian Assange! Free Julian Assange!
Moving on, Russia has accused the US of direct involvement in Sunday's deadly attack on Sevastopol, Crimea. Russia's defense ministry said the missiles used by Ukraine were US-supplied ATACMS missiles and claimed they were programmed by US specialists. The Russian defense ministry said 4 of the US-delivered Army tactical missile system equipped with cluster warheads were shot down by air defense systems, and the ammunition of a 5th had detonated in mid-air. Russia also condemned the lack of response from UN Secretariat, calling it an example of double standards.
All responsible for this and other terrorist attacks will be held accountable. The fact that the US is directly involved in this crime is beyond any doubt. The lack of any meaningful response from the UN Secretariat that is supposed to stand against such obvious crimes and violations of international law is even more regretful. It is a clear example of double standards of the UN Secretariat, who is very eloquent on other occasions.
Now, 4 people and over 150 more were injured in the attack as missile debris fell on a beach nearby. Moving on, the US ambassador to Russia, Lynn Tracy, was summoned to the foreign ministry with a warning that retaliation would follow. Now, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that Washington provides weapons to Ukraine so it can defend its sovereign territory, including Crimea.
We provide weapons to Ukraine so it can defend its sovereign territory against armed aggression. That includes in Crimea, which of course is part of Ukraine. And Russia could stop this war today and end the suffering caused by the war Russia launched today if it would stop its occupation of sovereign Ukrainian territory and stop launching attacks on civilians.
Meanwhile, 2 Russian missiles hit the town of Pokrovsk on Monday. At least 5 people have been killed and over 40 wounded in the strike. The injured have been admitted to the hospital. Volunteers and bypassers transported the victims to the hospital. Ukrainian Prosecutor General Office said Russian troops launched 2 Iskander-M ballistic missiles at the town, which is about 24 kilometers from the front line. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has replaced the commander of the Joint Forces Command of Ukraine's military. Zelensky said that he had appointed Brigadier General Andrei Natov as the new commander of the Joint Forces of Ukraine's armed forces. Andrei have replaced Lieutenant General Yuri Sudol. The announcement was made after a series of reports that Sudol had performed badly in more than 2-year-old conflict against Russia. And now let's take a look at some other developments apart from those from the battleground. The European Union will now open membership talks with Ukraine on Tuesday, giving the country a political post. The ceremony will be held in Luxembourg and it will focus on symbolism, starting after the European Union assesses Ukrainian legislation for reforms to meet European Union standards. Deputy Prime Minister Olga Stefanishyna will lead the Ukrainian delegation at the event. Marking the start of the talks with Ukraine and Moldova, European Union is signaling that both the countries are on a path towards greater integration with the West. The foreign policy advisor to Ukrainian President Zelensky, Ahar Zavovka, said it would give Ukraine's morale a big lift. French President Emmanuel Macron and NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg met in Paris on Monday. Now, both the leaders met to discuss the upcoming July NATO summit and the situation in Ukraine. They reaffirmed their staunch support to Kyiv. NATO member countries are set to meet in Washington, D.C. on the 9th and 10th of July with an aim on agreeing on a support package for Ukraine. Meanwhile, Jens Stoltenberg will step down as NATO chief in the month of October after nearly a decade at the helm. The European Union's foreign policy chief says a plan has been devised to ensure Ukraine receives funds through Russian frozen assets. European Union foreign ministers convened for talks on Monday on how to navigate Hungary's opposition to support Kyiv. William Denslow reports from Brussels.
The European Union's Foreign Affairs Chief Josep Borrell has warned that, as evidenced by Vladimir Putin, Russia's president's recent trip to North Korea, Moscow is planning for a long-haul war in Ukraine. He says for that reason, investment for Kyiv in its war effort must continue unabated. There are 2 sides to what the EU is trying to achieve when it comes to its support for Ukraine. The first is tightening the purse strings on the Kremlin. We've seen evidence of that by the fact that the EU has recently passed its 14th round of sanctions on Moscow, this time largely targeting liquefied natural gas that Russia produces. The other major part of it is providing a military support for Ukraine going forward. One huge issue for the European Union has been Hungary, which has been a major holdout for the EU's efforts to provide Ukraine with greater military assistance. However, Josep Borrell says that EU members have found a workaround because the fact that Budapest earlier this year abstained from a vote regarding Ukrainian funding. Borrell says that that means they can move forward without Hungary's participation to get some degree of financing passed. He says that is to the tune of around $1.5 billion in military assistance. It also potentially provides a green light for the use of frozen Russian assets. Recently, when G7 leaders met in Italy, they agreed on a plan to provide Ukraine with a loan to the tune of around $50 billion that would then be paid back with those frozen Russian assets. When it comes to further developments for Ukraine, well, the first conference of accession talks for Ukraine to potentially join the EU is scheduled to begin on Tuesday in Luxembourg. That'll really be an opportunity for both sides to agree or to start the process of agreeing on a framework for Ukraine to begin its path towards joining the European Union. William Denslow in Brussels reporting for DD India.
It's time to take a quick and short break here on DD India News Hour, but still to come on the other side. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant arrived at State Department in Washington on Monday for talks with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Minnesota's Rapidan Dam faces imminent failure due to flood waters. And Kenya deploys police contingent at Haiti. Welcome back after that short break. You're watching DD India News Hour with me, Deepika. Now, the 24th of June marks the second anniversary of the US Supreme Court's reversal of Roe versus Wade, a ruling that removed federal protection for abortion rights and launched a new series of battles in Florida over access to reproductive care. After 2 years of political and legal wrangling, Florida law now prohibits women from getting abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. It is also one of the most restrictive bans across the country. Most Republican-controlled states have had new abortion restrictions in effect, including some that have banned abortion in almost all circumstances. Most Democrat-led states have laws or executive orders to protect access to abortion. In some of the states, the fight over access to abortion is continuing in courtrooms, with cases challenging aspects of the abortion bans or restrictions. US President Joe Biden's campaign used the second anniversary of the Supreme Court's decision overturning abortion rights on Monday to spotlight Donald Trump's role in the ruling as Democrats zero in on the issue ahead of the November election. Vice President Kamala Harris appealed to Latino women at an event in the swing state of Arizona on Monday, saying that 40% of Latinas of reproductive age live in states with an abortion ban. The vice president also continued attacking Trump at the event for his role in picking the Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe, saying it left young women with fewer reproductive rights than their mothers. And now updates on Israel-Hamas conflict. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant arrived at State Department in Washington on Monday for talks with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Gallant discussed the next phase of the Gaza war and escalating hostilities on the border with Lebanon. The Hezbollah began attacking Israel shortly after 7th of October Hamas's attack that sparked a conflict, and the sides have been trading blows in the months since then. Hezbollah has said it will not stop until there is a ceasefire in Gaza. Earlier in June, Hezbollah targeted Israeli towns and military sites after an Israeli strike killed the most senior Hezbollah commander yet. While the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken pressed Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant on the need for Israel to swiftly develop a robust post-war plan for Gaza and ensure that the tensions with Hezbollah on Israel's northern border do not escalate further. Gallant has been on a trip to Washington, D.C. and has also met Amos Hochstein and Brett McGurk, the top aides to US President Joe Biden, as well as CIA Director Bill Burns. He's set to meet with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin on Tuesday. The first Kenyan police officers assigned to tackle rampant gang violence in Haiti are leaving Kenya on Tuesday. Principal Secretary at Kenya's Internal Security and National Administration Ministry, Raymond Omolo, posted photographs of the police contingent bound for Haiti inside a plane on Monday. Omolo wished the group safety and success as they lead a multinational mission that will help restore law and order in the Caribbean nation. Kenya volunteered in July 2023 to lead an international force to tackle violence in Haiti. In Argentina, a retired naval captain and his wife, a retired public municipal worker, for being suspects in the disappearance of a 5-year-old child in the Corrientes province. Now, the suspects were charged with recruitment of people for exploitation, aggravated by the fact that the victim was underage. A police agent who hindered the investigation was detained as well. On Monday night, children and adults took to the streets to demand authorities find Lone Pina, who disappeared on the 13th of June in the town of Nadujola. A scandal over bets placed on the date of the UK election continues to dominate the campaign trail. Now, there are reports that an investigation into betting by members of the Conservative Party is expanding, and the Conservatives have launched their own probe into their claims now. TT India's Ollie Barrett reports from London.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says that his Conservative Party is carrying out its own investigation into the growing scandal around bets being placed on the date of the snap election. He insists that he doesn't know of any further Conservative Party candidates being investigated by the regulator, the Gambling Commission, at this stage, and the Prime Minister says he himself is not under investigation, but he's still facing major criticism from the other parties. The Labour leader Keir Starmer says if he were a leader of a party which had candidates facing allegations like this, that he would suspend them. The Liberal Democrats have called for the Prime Minister's ethics advisor to investigate, but also to look into whether any cabinet ministers may have placed any bets on the date of the election. And this is all making the final couple of weeks of the election campaign very, very difficult indeed for a Conservative Party already trailing by some distance in the polls. All of the polls still have the Conservatives around 20 points or more behind Labour. So the Labour Party, going into the final week and a bit of the campaign trail, are doing everything they can to try and encourage their voters out on July the 4th when election day gets here. They are trying to urge against complacency and any of their potential supporters feeling that it is a done deal that Labour will win the election.
Now, 22 people were confirmed dead and 8 others injured in South Korea's battery plant fire on Monday. The fire broke out at a primary battery plant in Waswong, around 45 kilometers south of the capital Seoul, at about 1:31 GMT. Firefighters struggled to extinguish the fire because of the difficulty in putting out the flame of lithium batteries. Eyewitnesses described the sound as similar to raining bullets and gunfire. It was unclear what caused the explosions, and the fire was largely extinguished in about 6 hours. Iran's presidential candidate Masoud Pezeshkian campaigned in Tehran, pledging to break the dam of Western sanctions on Iran and ruin those who benefit from them. Iran is due to conduct snap elections on the 28th of June after the death of President Ibrahim Raisi in a helicopter crash. Pezeshkian, a reformist lawmaker, is running against 5 other candidates.
From sanctions, those who benefit thousands of billions from these sanctions, and nobody knows. We will stand against them.
Now, the E3 ambassadors at the United Nations expressed deep concerns over International Atomic Energy Agency reports that points to Iran's significant escalation of nuclear activities, including enriching uranium far beyond JCPOA limits. Now, they called on Iran to cease these activities, cooperate with the IAEA, and honor its commitment to ensure a diplomatic resolution to the nuclear crisis. Iran is now enriching uranium to up to 60% purity, close to the 90% of weapons grade, and has enough material enriched to that level, if enriched further, for 3 nuclear weapons.
The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency reports that Iran's total stockpiles of enriched uranium now stand at more than 30 times the JCPOA limit. Iran is growing its stockpile of high-enriched uranium to levels unprecedented for a state without a nuclear weapons program. Such activity has no credible civilian justification. We reiterate our call on Iran to cease its ongoing escalation and return to compliance with its JCPOA commitments. Iran's lack of cooperation with the IAEA over many years undermines global non-proliferation.
Now, the Philippines has accused China of using illegal force to deliberately disrupt a resupply mission in the South China Sea. Its defense chief said that last week's maritime incident that injured a sailor was neither a misunderstanding nor an accident. Meanwhile, reacting to it, China's foreign ministry on Monday urged the Philippines to stop its infringements and provocations amid the two countries' ongoing disputed waters in the South China Sea. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said that China and the Philippines should work together to safeguard peace and stability in the South China Sea. Take a listen.
As for the incident of the Philippine ship illegally intruding into the waters adjacent to Renai Jiao, as you mentioned, the Chinese side has briefed you on the situation and clarified its position. Renai Jiao is a part of China's Nansha Islands and it is China's territory. The Philippine side should stop its infringements and provocations, return to the right track of properly handling maritime disputes through negotiation and consultation as soon as possible, and work with China to safeguard peace and stability in the South China Sea.
Now, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te put out a statement calling China an autocracy as real evil after China threatened to impose the death penalty to die-hard Taiwan independent separatists. He said that China has no right to sanction Taiwan's people.
I also want to call on China to face up to the existence of the Republic of China and have exchanges and dialogue with Taiwan's democratically elected legitimate government. This is the only correct way to increase the welfare of people on both sides of the strait. If this is not done, relations between Taiwan and China will only become more and more estranged.
The Colombian government and the Segunda Marquetalia armed group began peace talks as part of President Gustavo Petro's effort to end 60 years of war. The initial round of talks in Caracas, Venezuela, will last through the 29th of June. The government is holding separate talks with National Liberation Army, REPELS. The leaders of Segunda Marquetalia, a dissident faction of the now demobilized Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, first consented to a peace agreement in the year 2016. But they went back to fighting 3 years later, alleging unmet promises. Petro's efforts to stop the conflict have faced significant setbacks. In the United States, the Rapidan Dam in south-central Minnesota is in imminent failure. Local authorities have notified local residents of the possible danger. The dam is at risk because of debris that has accumulated along the Blue Earth River after days of rising water levels. The authorities have not issued mandatory evacuation orders, but the residents have been warned of the rising water levels. Authorities said they are aware of power outages and are monitoring several local bridges in case they need to be closed because of moving debris. And now in the India News Hour, let's take a look at other stories making news around the globe. 2 cavers missing for 40 hours in a 500-meter deep cave system in northern Spain were found unscathed by a team. They were discovered in one of the galleries that had been identified as a likely location and were set to emerge shortly from the Garmesiaga Cima del Sombrero cave system. The cave system has many underground rivers and very low temperatures and requires specialized equipment. The family of a British 13-year-old boy with severe epilepsy has been given his hope back after a device was fitted into his skull to control seizures in a force trial. The device's leads are connected to neurostimulator that was placed in a cap in Iran's skull and anchored in place. It emits a pulse of current to block or disrupt abnormal electrical activity in the brain. Previously, neurotransmitters were placed in the chest. The Amerigo Vespucci, which Italians call the world's most beautiful ship, is taking a taste of its homeland on a round-the-world tour with temporary exposure sessions at several stops showcasing Italian products and heritage. The ship is a Navy boat that entered service in 1931. The ship has completed about half of the tour stops and is expected to return to Italian waters in March 2025. Officials in Mexico and the United States have agreed to new security terms to protect U.S. health safety inspectors of avocados and mangoes. Two nations are collaborating on curbing illegal deforestation as well as environmental certification for farm products and labor issues. Avocados, in particular, are a top Mexican farm export worth billions of dollars each year. Nicaraguan Catholics fought and danced to honor John the Baptist as part of a tradition called Los Chinicros. Revelers gathered outside a church dedicated to John the Baptist in the town of San Juan de Oriento to celebrate the occasion. Parishioners walk around town carrying a large effigy of John the Baptist. The procession to the entrance of the temple is limited this time because of the tense situation between the government and the Catholic Church. It's time to take a quick and short break here on DD India News Hour, but still to come on the other side. Myths busted about the Indian Parliament that has passed 3 new criminal laws. Latest on the Hooch tragedy. And all you need to know about country's first dedicated test railway track. Welcome back after that short break. You're watching DD India News Hour with me, Deepika. Now, Sri Lanka was expecting to sign the bilateral debt restructuring agreements with key creditors Japan and India on Wednesday. Sri Lanka President Ranil Wickremesinghe provided a verbal update on debt restructuring progress to the members of the cabinet at a meeting held late on Monday. Now, the South Asian island nation defaulted on its foreign debt in May 2022 after its economy was driven to the brink by a severe fall in foreign exchange reserves. Sri Lanka reached a provisional agreement in November with the official creditor committee co-chaired by Japan, France and India in a key step to its economic recovery that has been aided by a $2.9 billion bailout package from the International Monetary Fund. Now in South Dakota, flooding has led to significant destruction, including the collapse of a key bridge and widespread damage to homes and infrastructure. Governor Kristi Noem has warned of the prolonged impact the flooding will have on the region. The collapse of the Burlington-Northern Santa Fe Railroad Bridge will have significant repercussions for many months as it is a crucial link for transporting commodities. In Mexico, high tide after the passing of tropical storm Alberto has caused major damage in the popular beach destination of Playa del Carmen in southeastern region. The foundations, furnishings and the facilities of the beach clubs and the hotels were damaged by the water. Beaches were also reduced by the water, leaving less space on the sand for the tourists. The authorities hope the beaches will return to their normal state, but recognize that this year the intensity of the rain and drastic changes in temperatures have been worse as compared to the previous years. Cities and towns along the banks of the Missouri River has restricted access to public areas due to expected flooding. The river has already breached its bank in the town of Blair in Nebraska. Severe thunderstorms were predicted for the upper Midwest, while the Southwest may get monsoon-like conditions due to moisture coming from the remnants of tropical cyclone Alberto that could produce flash flooding. The world is reeling under extreme effects of climate change. Not just land, but aquatic flora and fauna have also been forcefully affected. Devastating coral bleaching has been reported in Thailand's Lopa Khao Bay, Viking Cave and Pele Bay, where it has affected almost 100% of corals and sea anemone, with the situation deteriorating further. Now, as tourist activities may worsen the bleaching, experts say it is necessary to close the areas to tourists in the hope that this may slow down the process of bleaching. The marine parks and 3 popular diving spots in the Andaman Sea and the Gulf have been closed to the public since the month of April. Now, the second day of the first sitting of the 18th Lok Sabha commenced this morning, and the oath-taking ceremony for all the newly elected members of the parliament will be completed by today evening, after which the election of the Lok Sabha Speaker will be conducted on Wednesday. The President of India will also be addressing the joint sitting of the parliament on Thursday as part of the inaugural address of the 18th Lok Sabha. And to get you more on this, I am joined by DD India correspondent from New Delhi, Dipendu Mondal. A very good morning to you, Dipendu. Today is day 2 of the 18th Lok Sabha, and we are expecting the conclusion of the oath-taking ceremony. And side by side, we also have the nomination deadline. Please fill us in with more details on this.
Well, very good morning, Deepika. That's right. Today is day 2 of the first sitting of the 18th Lok Sabha. The first 2 days are occupied with the oath-taking ceremony of all the newly elected members of parliament that are already queuing up to go inside the Lok Sabha. We are just about 20-25 minutes away from the second sitting officially to begin, and the oath-taking ceremony also to begin, which will be administered by the pro-term speaker who was sworn in earlier last morning by the President of India. So this is how it will look like throughout the day, even today, with yesterday, as we can report that about 260 plus MPs did take oath yesterday. And today the rest of the MPs will be taking oath. The MPs are being called alphabetically with respect to their states. So for example, Assam began because it starts with A, so began yesterday, and today we'll conclude with the members of parliament from West Bengal. So of course, as you rightly said, the second most important thing that will happen today is the nomination of the Lok Sabha Speaker. The NDA will nominate their candidate for the Lok Sabha Speaker in a short while from now, after which the election of the Speaker will take place tomorrow. Deepika?
And also, Dipendu, when we talk about the issues, because after all these procedural steps that we are expecting, what are the issues expected to be on the table at the parliament this time?
Well, Deepika, after the President's inaugural address on Thursday, the motion of thanks will be put will be put forward in both the houses of parliament, which is both the Lok Sabha as well as the Rajya Sabha. And the motion of thanks will be debated and discussed in both the houses of parliament. So it is also pertinent to mention here that perhaps the opposition, which is pretty strong this time around, given the fact that the BJP alone has got 240 members this time. So, you know, several issues, particularly Deepika, the NEET examination issue could be picked up by the opposition when the motion of thanks is being debated and discussed in the parliament. So, of course, you know, we'll see a much more, fierce parliamentary proceedings happening this time around, given that the opposition have in the last general election held concluded recently. There are the significant number of opposition MPs that have been elected will try to make every use of the opportunity to rake up issues inside the parliament and disrupt proceedings. So, of course, you know, all eyes will be on the debates preceding the President's address on Thursday. Deepika.
All right, thank you so much, Dibyendu, for joining us and bringing us all the important details about day 2 of the Lok Sabha Parliament proceedings. And now a breaking news coming in for all the sports fans. Afghanistan has finally created history as they make it to the semi-final round of the T20 Cricket World Cup for the first time. Now, Afghanistan win the match against Bangladesh by a meager 8 runs. This is big news which we are getting to you from the world of sports. The T20 Cricket World Cup is ongoing. We recently saw that India defeated Australia, which was more like a revenge match for Team India, because earlier in the 50-over World Cup, Australia defeated India in the finals, and then India dominated Australia yesterday. It was important and pertinent to see that what happens with Afghanistan and Bangladesh, and now finally we are getting the update that Afghanistan is through to the semi-finals. This is a huge news not only for the Afghanistan fans but for the entire combination, permutations and the kind of upsets that we've seen in this entire T20 Cricket World Cup. Now the semi-finals are being lined up. India is all set to face Team England, and most likely South Africa would be up against Afghanistan in this very super clash. It is very important to see that, because Afghanistan has been a very good team in terms of performance of in all the departments, be it bowling, be it batting. However, their ride at this T20 Cricket World Cup has been really up and down, topsy and turvy. But finally, they've managed to beat Bangladesh. USA and West Indies were already out, and now this time Afghanistan has now made it to the semi-finals after winning the Super 8 encounter, which makes it really, really big for the team and the captain and all the players. They were earlier jittery about this match, that what happens, and since this is a crucial match, pressure is a key factor that keeps on building on the teams, because this is more like a do or die situation, and of course a matter of prestige for not only the cricket team but for the entire country, for entire Afghanistan as well. Now, also considering the past performances, we've always been saying that Afghanistan is a magical team when we talk about. However, when we talk about India side, it's always a skillful team. You know what to expect from the other teams when we talk about England, when we talk about South Africa, or when we talk about Australia for that matter. But when we talk about Afghanistan, Afghanistan is known for its magical performance. They've already made us see some great upsets at this edition of Cricket World Cup. And now finally they are into the semi-finals of the T20 Cricket World Cup, which is now scheduled to take place this week. India will be playing its semi-final on the 27th, which is Thursday, against England. And now Afghanistan is also into the semi-finals. It would be really interesting to see that how Afghanistan fares up across this semi-final stage to make it to the finals. Would they be able to reach there? That also remains to be seen, because magical Afghanistan has done it once again. Now, if we talk about the permutations and combinations, to quickly take a recap of this, if Australia would have defeated India, Afghanistan would have had to defeat Bangladesh by a big margin. But then, since this did not happen, Afghanistan really won it, because Australia lost it completely. So any victory by any margin for Afghanistan would have done the trick. And finally, it has done the trick for Team Afghanistan as they are into the semi-finals. And now to discuss more on this, I'm joined by DD India correspondent Suchitra. Suchitra, very good morning to you. A very good morning rather for Afghanistan fans also, because Afghanistan has created history moving into the semi-finals of this edition. Suchitra.
Yes, definitely, Deepika. A big day for Afghanistan cricket team, Afghanistan cricket, and for Asia, we must say, because Asian teams were also were always known to do good in the world events, be it India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh has also created some upsets in the past. But Afghanistan, we can say, is the new star in the sky, and the way they have played in this World Cup is extraordinary. And they are in the semi-finals, and we cannot take credit from them. They are in the semi-finals because of the way they have played. They were the ones who defeated Australia, and they created a path for themselves. And today, must-win situation against Bangladesh. Once again, they have shown their mettle. Their score of 115 was being called below par, but the way they bowl, their bowling has been their biggest strength in this particular tournament, and Rashid Khan has led from the front, and they are worthy semi-finalists in this edition of this World Cup, we can say, and we can be very proud. India also assisted them by defeating Australia yesterday, and India has been their home ground, the home ground of Afghanistan cricket team in the past few years. So yes, India has also helped in Afghanistan cricket reach at this level. Deepika.
And also when we talk about the semi-finals, they would be up against South Africa. Would that be a task? And also, should India be really careful of the final lineup if they go through the semi-final stage?
Yes, Afghanistan versus South Africa, it can be anybody's match. And now South Africa will be very scared of Afghanistan because we have seen, the world has seen that, they have defeated Australia. If they can defeat Australia, they can defeat any team. Even today against Bangladesh, for Australia, we can say they were not that great players of spin. But for Bangladesh, they were batsmen, who can play really well against the spin. But they have defended a little score of 115 against good players of spin from Bangladesh. So that has shown that on their day that they are a force to reckon with now in this World Cup, and they can defeat any team. And South Africa, like Australia, their batsmen also struggle against spin. So South Africa is going to be really scared, and Afghanistan is going to be a really big threat for Afghanistan. So the semi-final lineup is going to be very interesting now. India versus England and Afghanistan versus South Africa. Both the matches are going to be blockbusters. Deepika.
Indeed, and magical Afghanistan is finally into the semi-finals. We were getting you the breaking with Suchitra, getting us latest inputs. Thank you so much, Suchitra, for joining us and bringing us a rounded perspective on this big breaking for all the sports fans specifically. Now it's time to take a quick and short break here on DD India News Hour, but still to come on the other side.
Welcome to Jaipur.
Welcome back after that short break. You're watching DD India News Hour with me, Deepika. Now, India's former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi imposed a nationwide emergency on the 25th of June in the year 1975. Several opposition leaders were arrested. Emergency imposed citing breakdown of the law and order situation of the country owing to massive protest by the opposition parties alleging corruption by the Congress regime. During the emergency, Indira Gandhi bestowed upon herself the power to rule by decree. On the 21st of March in the year 1977, Indira Gandhi withdrew the emergency and announced general elections. The Congress party was ousted and the Janata Party led by Morarji Desai gained absolute majority. Morarji Desai became the first non-Congress Prime Minister of India then. And recalling the dark days of emergency, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on his social media platform X wrote, and I quote his tweet here, "Today is a day to pay homage to all those great men and women who resisted the emergency." The dark days of emergency remind us of how the Congress party subverted basic freedoms and trampled over the constitution of India, which every Indian respects greatly. Just to cling on to power, the then Congress government disregarded every democratic principle and made the nation into a jail. Any person who disagreed with the Congress was tortured and harassed. Socially regressive policies were unleashed to target the weakest sections. Those who imposed the emergency have no right to profess their love for our constitution. These are the same people who've imposed Article 356 on innumerable occasions, got a bill to destroy press freedom, destroyed federalism and violated every aspect of the constitution. The mindset which led to the imposition of the emergency is very much alive among the same party which imposed it. They hide their disdain for the constitution through their tokenism, but the people of India have seen through their antics, and that is why they've rejected them time and again. Unquote. Now, DD India correspondent Nandita Dagar spoke to a veteran journalist and anti-emergency activist, Mr. K. Vikram Rao, who recounted how he spent 13 months in jail during emergency.
On 25th of June 1975, the then Indian Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, had imposed a national emergency where the powers of the constitution were completely curbed. And during that time, there were journalists and several professionals, people who were agitating and were political prisoners. We are joined by Mr. K. Vikram Rao. He is a veteran journalist of more than 40 years of experience in the media. Why is it important that the young generation knows about it?
On 25th of June 1975, what happened in this country was a fascist regime. Even Italy and Germany did not face that, which we faced in India. It was brutal, inhuman, barbarian, the way journalists and human beings were treated by the then government. And I'm glad what Prime Minister Narendra Modi said in Lok Sabha today, that who are opposing Constitution of India, who are accusing the Modi government of killing Constitution. These people, the very same people who had murdered Constitution without any remorse.
With camera person Rajesh Riki in New Delhi, this is Nandita Dagar for DD India.
The Indian Parliament passed 3 new criminal laws, the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, the Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita and the Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam to replace the Indian Penal Code 1860, the Criminal Procedure Code 1973 and the Indian Evidence Act 1872. Now, these are soon to be implemented. There are some myths related to these and DD India busts them for you.
The newly enacted laws Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita and Bharatiya Sakshya Act, which will completely overhaul the criminal justice system in the country, will come into effect from July 1st this year. The 3 laws got the Parliament's approval on December 21st last year and President Draupadi Murmu gave her assent on December 25th. The laws will replace the colonial-era Indian Penal Code, the Code of Criminal Procedure and the Indian Evidence Act of 1872. The 3 legislations aim at completely overhauling the criminal justice system in the country by giving definitions of various offences and their punishments. However, the provision related to cases of hit and run by vehicle drivers will not be implemented immediately. There are several myths related to these 3 laws. There's a myth that the new criminal law threatens individual freedom and aims to establish a police state. However, the truth is that the law safeguards against such misuse. The new laws incorporate safeguards to prevent misuse of power, emphasizing accountability and transparency in law enforcement actions. The new provisions for audio-video recording of search and seizure operation ensures transparency. Introduction of EFIR provision enhances accessibility, allows individuals to lodge complaints from anywhere. The provision requiring unnecessary arrest has also been removed. The denial of bail only on the ground of extended police custody beyond first 15 days is not allowed. Judicial flexibility provision of zero FIR eliminates the jurisdictional constraints enabling individuals to file complaints at any police station. Strict oversight mechanisms including mandatory recording of arrests and evidence of collection act as preventive measures against potential police excesses.
Now, latest in the Kallakurichi Hooch tragedy in Tamil Nadu, and the death toll has now risen to 58. Union Minister JP Nadda wrote to Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge questioning the stoic silence of his party on the tragedy. JP Nadda also accused Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin of stalling a free, fair and independent probe by the CBI into the number of deaths and not allowing the opposition to raise the issue in and outside the State Assembly. He reiterated BJP's demand for the removal of State Minister for Excise and Prohibition S. Muthuswamy and an increase in compensation to the victims' families. Flood situation in northeastern state of Assam improved marginally, with the water level of the major rivers showing a receding trend. The numbers of affected people climbed down to 1.7 lakh in 641 villages of 9 districts. Karimganj is the most affected district with 96,440 flood victims alone. One death was reported in Kachar on Monday to take the toll up to 30 this year. Meanwhile, the Met Department has predicted thunderstorms and heavy rainfall at isolated places of Assam, Meghalaya and other northeastern states. A high-level panel for suggesting exam reforms and reviewing functioning of the National Testing Agency met on Monday amid a row over irregularities in competitive exams. The Education Ministry on Saturday notified a 7-member panel headed by former Indian Space Research Organisation Chief K. Radhakrishnan to ensure transparent, smooth and fair conduct of examinations through the NTA. The committee is slated to submit its report within 2 months.
The first priority for us is to elicit from the students and parents of this country their concerns and their suggestions. We are also looking at the future, especially to develop in this country a robust system, a tamper-proof system, the system with zero error, and a system that will lessen the difficulties and stress for the students.
And now indeed India News Hour, let's take a look at other stories making news around the country. Delhi Water Minister Atishi is currently hospitalized due to deteriorating health condition. The minister has been on an indefinite hunger strike since the last 4 days, claiming that the state of Haryana is not releasing Delhi's share of water. Earlier, Delhi cabinet ministers urged Prime Minister Narendra Modi to address water crisis and support Water Minister Atishi's fast with candlelight march. India's first high-speed railway testing track is being constructed in Rajasthan, which will be ready by the month of December 2025, confirmed the officials of North Western Railway. The work is being carried out in 2 phases and almost 60% of the work has been completed. The project is intended to improve the country's railway system testing facilities, and the tracks will be used. Ladakh Lieutenant Governor Brigadier B.D. Mishra laid the foundation stone to build a Buddha statue at Sindhu Ghat in India's Leh. The event took place as part of the Doordarshan festival being celebrated along the banks of the river Sindhu in Leh-Ladakh region this month. The festival is being celebrated over a period of 3 days with the motive of endorsing the Indus River as an icon of communal harmony across India. The Kerala Assembly has unanimously passed a second resolution asking the centre to officially change the state's name to Keralam, nearly a year after it unanimously passed a similar resolution before the centre returned it for corrections. The resolution will be sent to the union government for approval. And now it's time to get you all the latest from the world of business. Well, stocks in a variety of sectors rallied on Monday and the blue-chip Dow Jones Industrial Average ended at a one-month high. Investors rotated out of AI-linked stocks and added some laggards to their portfolios, betting on Federal Reserve interest rate cuts this year. Investors still expect about 2 rate cuts this year, pricing in a 61% chance of a 25 basis point cut in September as per LSEG's Fed Watch. The Fed's own latest projection is for 1 rate cut likely in December. The S&P 500 lost 0.31%, while the Nasdaq Composite lost 1.09%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.67%. Asian shares were subdued on Tuesday while the battered yen hit a record low versus the euro, although the risk of intervention stemmed further weakness against the US dollar. Treasuries were little changed as caution set in ahead of key US price data on Friday. With the first US presidential debate on Thursday and the first round of voting in the French election at the weekend, investors remain cautious of how political shifts in major economies could impact their positions.
Honorable members, 262 members have taken oath affirmation yesterday. Names of members who could not take oath or affirmation yesterday will be called in the end. Now, Secretary General.
Maharashtra, Advocate Gowal Kagda Padvi.
मैं गोवाल कागड़ा पाडवी जो लोकसभा का सदस्य निर्वाचित हुआ हूँ, सत्यनिष्ठा से प्रतिज्ञान करता हूँ कि मैं विधि द्वारा स्थापित भारत के संविधान के प्रति सच्ची श्रद्धा और निष्ठा रखूँगा। मैं भारत की प्रभुता और अखंडता अक्षुण्ण रखूँगा तथा जिस पद को मैं ग्रहण करने वाला हूँ उसके कर्तव्यों का श्रद्धापूर्वक निर्वहन करूँगा।
श्रीमती बच्छाव शोभा दिनेश।
और एक बार बुला लीजिए।
श्रीमती बच्छाव शोभा दिनेश।
मी डॉक्टर शोभा दिनेश बच्छाव लोकसभेची सदस्य म्हणून निवडून आली असल्याने परमेश्वरास साक्षी ठेवून शपथ घेते की मी विधीद्वारा स्थापित भारतीय संविधानाप्रती अनन्य श्रद्धा व निष्ठा बाळगीन, भारतीय सार्वभौमत्वाचे आणि भारतीय एकतेचे निर्धाराने रक्षण करीन आणि जे कर्तव्य आता मला प्राप्त होत आहे ते नेकीने पार पाडीन। जय हिंद, जय संविधान, जय महाराष्ट्र।
बहुत बहुत बधाई हो।
श्रीमती स्मिता उदय वाघ।
जय हरी। मी स्मिता उदय वाघ लोकसभेची सदस्य म्हणून निवडून आली असल्याने परमेश्वरास स्मरून शपथ घेते की विधीद्वारा स्थापित भारतीय संविधानाप्रत अनन्य श्रद्धा व निष्ठा बाळगीन, भारतीय सार्वभौमत्वाचे आणि भारतीय एकतेचे निर्धाराने रक्षण करीन आणि जे कर्तव्य मला प्राप्त होत आहे ते नेहमीने पार पडेल। भारत माता की जय। जय शिवराय।
श्री अनूप संजय धोत्रे।
मैं अनूप संजय धोत्रे जो लोकसभा का सदस्य निर्वाचित हुआ हूँ, ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूँ कि मैं विधि द्वारा स्थापित भारत के संविधान के प्रति सच्ची श्रद्धा और निष्ठा रखूँगा। मैं भारत की प्रभुता और अखंडता अक्षुण्ण रखूँगा तथा जिस पद को मैं ग्रहण करने वाला हूँ उसके कर्तव्यों का श्रद्धापूर्वक निर्वहन करूँगा। जय जवान, जय किसान।
श्री बलवंत बसवंत वांखड़े।
मी बळवंत सीताबाई बसवंत वानखडे लोकसभेचा सदस्य म्हणून निवडून आलो असल्याने भारतीय संविधानास्मरून शपथ घेतो की मी विधीद्वारा स्थापित भारतीय संविधानाप्रती अनन्य श्रद्धा व निष्ठा बाळगीन, भारतीय सार्वभौमत्व आणि भारतीय एकतेचे निर्धाराने रक्षण करेल आणि जे कर्तव्य आता मला प्राप्त होत आहे ते नेकीने पार पाडीन। जय भीम, जय शिवराय।
श्री अमर शरदराव काले।
मी अमर शरदराव काळे लोकसभेचा सदस्य म्हणून निवडून आलो असल्याने परमेश्वरास स्मरून शपथ घेतो की मी विधीद्वारा प्रस्थापित भारतीय संविधानाप्रत अनन्य श्रद्धा व निष्ठा बाळगेन. भारतीय सार्वभौमत्वाचे आणि भारतीय एकतेचे निर्धाराने रक्षण करीन आणि जे कर्तव्य आता मला प्राप्त होत आहे ते नेकीने पार पाडीन. जय हिंद, जय संविधान.
श्री श्याम कुमार बबलू दौलत बर्वे.
मैं श्याम कुमार बर्वे, जो लोकसभा का सदस्य निर्वाचित हुआ हूँ, सत्यनिष्ठा से प्रतिज्ञा करता हूँ कि मैं विधि द्वारा स्थापित भारत के संविधान के प्रति सच्ची श्रद्धा और निष्ठा रखूँगा. मैं भारत की प्रभुता और अखंडता अक्षुण्ण रखूँगा तथा जिस पद को मैं ग्रहण करने वाला हूँ उसके कर्तव्य का श्रद्धापूर्वक निर्वहन करूँगा.
डॉक्टर प्रशांत यादवराव पडोले.
मैं डॉक्टर प्रशांत शोभा यादवरावजी पडोले, जो लोकसभा का सदस्य निर्वाचित हुआ हूँ, ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूँ कि मैं विधि द्वारा स्थापित भारत के संविधान के प्रति सच्ची श्रद्धा और निष्ठा रखूँगा. मैं भारत की प्रभुता और अखंडता अक्षुण्ण रखूँगा तथा जिस पद को मैं ग्रहण करने वाला हूँ उसके कर्तव्य का श्रद्धापूर्वक निर्वहन करूँगा. जय हिंद, जय संविधान.